Hello there. So I'm going to be talking about what a lotus birth is, why we chose to do it, and how it went for us. Excuse my really shabby hair and bedroom, but this is how I'm rolling. So, right before COVID hit, I'm talking about 2 weeks before, everybody at my workplace had to have the schmack schmeen and had to wear masks. I went on maternity leave. So lucky. And I mean, it just worked out really well because I would have had to quit anyway because there was no way I was doing any of that stuff. I chose to give birth right here on my floor. So I gave birth right here next to my bed on the floor. Not on the floor. I was in a bath, but next to my bed at home. That was the choice that my husband and I had made, and it was amazing compared to my first birth. Now, this video isn't about my birth, but we decided to do a lotus birth, which was something that I researched before birthing, obviously, and I was completely adamant and felt really aligned with doing. And I'll tell you why. Because it's natural. It is such a natural way of separating or allowing the baby to separate from the umbilical cord. So what is a lotus birth? A lotus birth is not a style of birthing, but a style of the separation between baby and umbilical cord. There were heaps of reasons as to why I chose this option. I'll rattle off some to you. One is that the baby can separate this from the umbilical cord in their own time. It was a less invasive and, okay, you're probably going to really dislike this word, but violent. The separation is less violent, as in what normally happens after birth, the umbilical cord gets cut very, very soon after birth. Another thing was that it allowed the placenta to complete pulsating all the nutrients. There is something called delayed clamping or delayed cutting so that babies can actually get that extra stem cells and the rest of their blood. Supposedly, when they don't, they have a higher risk for jaundice, and it just helps boost their immune system. The other thing was that I wanted to do this the most natural way possible. And I would ask myself, what did our ancestors used to do back before they were just cutting cords? Like, I was so sure they weren't all just cutting their babies' cords as soon as they'd given birth. I wanted to go slow and I wanted to go natural. There are reasons why this isn't for everyone. For one, the baby is attached to the placenta still, so their cord is still attached to the placenta. They're not, I guess, free in the sense where you can just take shirts on and off and all that kind of stuff. You just have to be aware that they will be attached to the placenta still. After about 24 hours, the umbilical cord itself dries like a twig, becomes solid, and you have to kind of move it from side to side when dressing the baby. The other thing to consider is there is placenta care that will come with the lotus birth itself. So part of the placenta care, very natural and like a continued caring of the organ that connects her to me. Placenta care was something that we thought about long before the birth again. It was something we took into consideration. So we actually bought a placenta bag, which is a handmade bag that holds the placenta. I'll actually show it to you. This is what a placenta bag is, and I bought this off Etsy. Once the placenta is outside of the body, I would put it on a bluey, which it has a plastic backing, so the fluid that will come out during dehydration process, I would call it, is happening, which you can get online or at probably a pharmacy. And then we put heaps of salt and we got sea salt, and we also got scented salt. It was orange scented salt down first, and also different herbs. So we had rosemary, lavender, and dry rose. Put that at the bottom, put the placenta on top, so it sat on top, and then covered the top with salt and the herbs. There's heaps of different herb choices that people can choose. You can choose calendula, you can choose, rosemary, thyme, oregano. I mean, whatever herbs you like, that is like what you want to tend to the placenta with. And we would change that about 2 or 3 times a day, generally 2 times a day. The first 2 to 3 days, a lot of fluid comes out of that placenta. So maybe like 3 times the first 2 or 3 days, and then it just went to morning and night. We would completely change the salt and the herbs. And eventually the placenta shrunk smaller and smaller as it dehydrated and basically preserved. During this time, the umbilical cord is quite dry and becomes like a really thin twig, and there's like a tiny little thread that kind of sticks to the belly button. And the way that the babies separate from that is either they kick it off. So for Poppy, she kicked hers off at the 5-day mark. And for Isabella, when I picked her up while I was changing her, it just came off on its own. They don't cry, they don't notice that it's come off. And from how we researched and the things that other lotus birth mothers had described and explained it, was that it was a gentle way for the baby to separate from this organ that it has been, attached to physically, energetically, and spiritually to the mother. That just matched and aligned our values, which was natural, to take our time and to respect and honor our babies' time for separation. It was a really, really beautiful process. I really loved it. My husband really enjoyed tending to the placenta, mixing the herbs. It was something that really allowed him to be a part of, because he is the man. Like, he couldn't give birth to the girls, but he was able to take part of this, I guess, initiation into fatherhood for each child by tending to their placenta, and he just absolutely loved it. The girls' placentas are in our freezer right now. They still look beautifully salted and herbed, and they will be buried during a time where the girls are old enough to acknowledge what their placenta is, and in an area where they are happy to bury their organ. We were hoping and thinking of a special place that we can come back to over the years and remember as being, where they have buried their placenta. We would probably think under a tree as a gift to Gaia, as a gift to trees and to nature. And if you haven't figured it out already, we are pretty nature-based people, or as much as we can be. It's not big in hospitals. I'd have to say, like, even for home birthing, for me, I was the first person that my midwife knew of who actually was doing the lotus birth and completed it from start to finish. I also really loved the fact that it really emphasized the staying home, staying in bed, staying rested, staying nourished, instead of like, right, cut that cord, now we can get out and about and get moving and go here and there and everywhere, was something sacred for us. We didn't have anybody come over during that time. If I ever did, move the baby, it was always a consideration as to, where the placenta was around their body, and to have to carry that with the baby too. So it's makes it, I guess, an inconvenience to kind of get out there and get all social and, back to life pre-baby, because life post-baby is not life pre-baby. It is also said that babies that have a lotus birth are a lot calmer and a lot more grounded in their body, in their spirit, because the transition between leaving the womb and then separation from the umbilical cord is done in its own time. So that was also something that we thought was a plus. And I mean, it was a success. It was a natural separation between the umbilical cord. There's so many different ways people do it. There's so many options. Now people burn it with a candle and, fire, and or just cut, or I think some people like to bite the umbilical cord in separation. Yeah, there's so many different ways, and this is one way that we thought was best for us, and we wanted to do it this way, and it was incredibly beautiful. It gave us a really beautiful connection between us and the placenta, and a beautiful connection for my husband and the placenta, and just a beautiful initiation of ourselves as mothers and fathers post-birth. So something that we completely loved doing and would do again if ever we were to have any more babies. So I hope this was informative, and yeah, let us know if this is something you would ever consider doing.